Welcome to the InnoGuide Podcast, where we share the works of authors and mentors to guide innovation. In podcast number 18, we are sharing part 1 of How We Decide by Jonah Lehrer. As the pilot is approaching Tokyo's Narita International Airport in a Boeing 737, the left engine catches fire. He describes the chaos in the cockpit, alarms blaring, red lights flashing, the plane becoming increasingly difficult to control. Pilot faces a critical decision: attempt to gain altitude with the remaining engine or steepen the descent to gain speed and avoid a stall. He opts for the latter, gaining speed by descending, and he manages to stabilize the plane and execute a rough but stable, safe landing. The twist here is that the intense scenario was part of a simulation, part of a training exercise in a high-tech flight simulator. But despite the artificial setting, the experience felt real for the pilot, highlighting the emotional and cognitive processes involved in decision-making under pressure. This reflects on the value of simulators in exploring decision-making, allowing pilots to test different strategies and learn from their outcomes without real-world consequences. This experience serves as a springboard for the book's exploration of decision-making. Jonah challenges the traditional notion of human rationality, arguing that decisions are often driven by emotions and instincts rather than pure logic. He delves into the brain's complex workings, emphasizing that good decision-making requires a balance between rational analysis and emotional intuition. The book aims to uncover how the brain's structure and the environment influence decisions, offering insights into improving decision-making across various fields from aviation to finance and beyond. Through this lens, he examines how understanding the brain's decision-making processes can lead to better outcomes in real-world scenarios. By blending personal experience with scientific exploration, the book seeks to illuminate the intricate dance between emotion and reason in the human mind, ultimately guiding the reader toward more informed and effective decision-making. Chapter 1. In the final moments of the 2002 Super Bowl, the New England Patriots, led by their young quarterback Tom Brady, faced a daunting challenge. With just minute and 21 seconds left on the clock, and the score tied against the heavily favored St. Louis Rams, the Patriots found themselves on their own 17-yard line without any timeouts. Conventional wisdom suggested they should play it safe and take the game into overtime. However, Brady and his coaches, Bill Belichick and Charlie Weiss, decided to take a calculated risk. Despite being the 199th pick in the 2000 draft, and initially underestimated due to his perceived lack of physical prowess, Brady had demonstrated exceptional decision-making skills and poise under pressure. As the game unfolded, Brady's ability to read the Rams' defense and make quick strategic decisions became evident. He methodically advanced the ball down the field, opting for safe short passes that exploited the Rams' defensive formations. With time running out, Brady's composure and tactical acumen shone through. He managed to move the Patriots into field goal range with a crucial pass to wide receiver Troy Brown, setting up a 48-yard field goal attempt. As the clock expired, Adam Vinatieri's kick sailed through the uprights, securing a stunning victory for the Patriots and marking one of the greatest upsets in NFL history. This moment exemplified Brady's remarkable ability to remain calm and make effective decisions under intense pressure, a skill that would define his career and contribute to his legacy as one of the greatest quarterbacks in the history of the sport. In the high-stakes world of NFL football, a quarterback's ability to make rapid decisions under pressure offers a fascinating glimpse into the brain's decision-making processes. As the pocket collapses around him, an NFL quarterback must quickly assess the chaotic scene, identify an open receiver, and deliver the ball all within a few seconds. This process is far more complex than it appears from the distant, choreographed view provided by the TV cameras. The reality on the field is a chaotic mix of strategy and improvisation. Quarterback must possess a flood of information, the positions of defenders, the routes of receivers, and the shifting dynamics of the offensive line. Despite the physical and mental demands, the quarterback must remain focused and poised, making split-second decisions that can determine the outcome of the game. NFL scouts place significant emphasis on quarterbacks' decision-making skills, often using the Wonderlic intelligence test to assess potential players. This test, which includes both simple and complex questions, is designed to measure cognitive abilities. However, the correlation between Wonderlic scores and NFL success is weak. Many successful quarterbacks, like Vince Young and Dan Marino, scored poorly on the test, while others with high scores struggled in the league. The reason for this disconnect is that skills required to solve algebra problems, which are part of the test, differ from those needed to find an open receiver. In the heat of the game, quarterbacks like Tom Brady don't have the luxury of time to consciously analyze every variable. Instead, they rely on instinct and experience to make decisions. Brady, for example, cannot articulate why he chose to pass to a particular receiver. He simply feels it's the right choice. This intuitive decision-making is akin to a baseball player deciding to swing at a pitch. The speed of the game makes conscious thought impractical. Quarterbacks must evaluate their options almost subconsciously, relying on a deep, almost mysterious understanding of the game. As Brady himself admits, there are no firm rules guiding his decision. It's a matter of instinct and feeling. In essence, the quarterback's role is a testament to the brain's remarkable ability to process complex information and make rapid decisions without conscious deliberation. This blend of instinct, experience, and quick thinking is what sets great quarterbacks apart, allowing them to excel in the fast-paced, unpredictable environment of professional football. Jonah observes that the enigma of decision-making, such as how Tom Brady decides where to throw a football, has long puzzled philosophers and scientists alike. Despite being defined by our decisions, we often lack awareness of the mental processes behind them. This mystery has led to numerous theories, with the most popular framing decision-making as a battle between reason and emotion, where reason is often seen as the victor. This view suggests that rationality is what sets humans apart from animals, allowing us to transcend our instincts and impulses. Plato was one of the first to articulate this duality, likening the mind to a chariot pulled by two horses, reason and emotion. The rational brain, or the charioteer, must control the unruly horse of emotion to lead to a life of happiness and harmony. This metaphor has deeply influenced Western thought, portraying humans as torn between their animalistic desires and their capacity for reason. René Descartes furthered this idea by dividing human existence into a rational soul and a body driven by mechanical passions. He sought to purify human intellect from the emotional falsehoods, advocating for a life led by reason. This Cartesian faith in rationality became the cornerstone of modern philosophy, influencing thinkers like Francis Bacon, Immanuel Kant, and even the founders of the cult of reason during the French Revolution. Sigmund Freud offered a 20th century version of this duality, describing the mind as a conflict between the id, primitive desires, and the ego, rational self. Freud believed that mental disorders arose from unrestrained emotions, and that civilization depended on the suppression of these desires for the greater good. However, as Freudian psychology lost credibility, the metaphor of the mind as a computer emerged. Cognitive psychology likened the brain to software running on neural hardware, emphasizing rational thought and often neglecting emotions. This view reinforced the Platonic divide, portraying emotions as obstacles to reality. Despite its enduring appeal, this theory of human nature is flawed. It elevates humans above animals by emphasizing rationality, but also blames emotions for our mistakes. In reality, emotions and reason are interdependent. Without emotions, reason would not exist. This insight challenges the traditional view, suggesting that our feelings are not hindrances but essential components of decision-making. In 1982, a patient named Elliot visited neurologist Antonio Damasio after having a tumor removed from his frontal lobe. Although Elliot's IQ remained high, he became incapable of making decisions, rendering his life unmanageable. Routine tasks took hours as he deliberated over trivial details, and he eventually lost his job, went bankrupt, and faced personal turmoil. Despite his intelligence, Elliot's inability to feel emotions left him unable to make decisions, suggesting that emotions are crucial to the decision-making process. Damasio's observations led him to test Elliot's emotional responses using a machine that measured sweat gland activity. Elliot showed no emotional reaction to disturbing images, indicating a lack of emotional engagement. This finding challenged the prevailing belief that emotions were irrational and that a lack of emotion would lead to better decision-making. Damasio studied other patients with similar brain damage and found that they too struggled with decision-making due to a lack of emotional response. These patients appeared intelligent but were unable to make choices, highlighting the importance of emotions in decision-making. Damasio identified the orbitofrontal cortex, OFC, as a key brain region involved in integrating emotions into decision-making. Damage to this OFC disrupts this process, leading to indecision and poor judgment. The discovery contradicts traditional view of the brain as a hierarchy with reason at the top, controlling primitive emotions. Instead, emotions are integral to the decision-making process, with the OFC playing a crucial role in connecting emotions to conscious thought. Emotions guide our choices by providing a subconscious assessment of options, influencing our decisions in ways we may not be aware of. The findings suggest that humans are not purely rational beings, but are deeply influenced by emotions. The OFC, larger in humans than in other primates, underscores the importance of emotions in human cognition. Contrary to the belief that reason should dominate emotions, the human brain relies on emotions to make decisions, making Homo sapiens the most emotional of animals. Creating a daytime soap opera is a demanding endeavor, requiring the production of a new episode almost daily. This involves generating fresh plot twists, writing scripts, rehearsing actors, and meticulously planning each scene before filming. Typically, it takes about 12 hours to film a 22-minute episode, a process that's repeated 5 days a week. Herb Stein, a veteran director of the soap opera Days of Our Lives on NBC, exemplifies the dedication required in this field. With over 50,000 scenes directed and hundreds of actors cast, Stein has been nominated for 8 Daytime Emmys. His expertise in melodrama, encompassing writing, blocking, filming, editing, and producing, stems from a career that began with a fascination for classic Greek tragedies. Stein's approach to drama, whether discussing ancient plays or modern soaps, is akin to that of a literature professor, finding profound ideas in seeming implausible plot lines. The essence of successful soap opera direction, according to Stein, lies in storytelling that feels sincere, even when the narrative is outrageous. For instance, he describes a scene involving a woman giving birth to twins fathered by 2 different men, one a rapist, the other her true love, while under duress to marry the rapist to save her family. Such scenes require Stein to make quick, instinctual decisions about character positioning, emotional conveyance, and camera angles, often within an hour of filming. Stein likens his role to that of a quarterback, making split-second decisions without the luxury of multiple takes. His ability to trust his instincts, honed over decades, is crucial in both directing and casting. Casting is particularly vital as the appeal of actors can significantly change impact ratings. Stein's instinctual approach allows him to identify the right actor within seconds, relying on emotional cues rather than overanalyzing. This instinctual decision-making is supported by neuroscience, as explained by Joseph Ledoux, who notes that much of our thinking is driven by emotions. These emotions act as summaries of data processed by the brain, allowing for quick, effective decisions. Stein's reliance on his emotional brain, developed over years of experience, enables him to make rapid, accurate choices in directing and casting. The evolution of the human brain has refined these emotional processes over millions of years, allowing for fast, instinctual decisions. This is evident in activities like hitting a baseball, where players rely on anticipatory cues rather than conscious analysis. Similarly, Stein's emotional instincts guide his directorial choices, demonstrating the power of emotions in decision-making. William James, a pioneering psychologist, recognized the importance of emotions in decision-making, arguing that the human brain's instincts and emotions are essential to its effectiveness. This dual-system approach, rational and emotional, enables individuals like Stein and athletes like Tom Brady to make quick, informed decisions in high-pressure situations. Chapter 2. In the early hours of February 24, 1991, during Operation Desert Storm, the 1st and 2nd Marine Divisions advanced into Kuwait from Saudi Arabia. Their mission was to liberate Kuwait swiftly to avoid prolonged urban warfare. The Marines faced a formidable Iraqi defense, including fortified positions and minefields, with the expectation of heavy casualties. Supporting the Marines, a fleet of coalition battleships and destroyers, including the British destroyer HMS Gloucester, was stationed off the Kuwaiti coast. These ships provided crucial air cover, but were also vulnerable to Iraqi missile attacks. On the morning of the Marine invasion, the radar crews, including Lieutenant Commander Michael Riley on the HMS Gloucester, were on high alert, monitoring for threats. At 5:01 a.m., Riley noticed a radar blip headed toward the USS Missouri. Despite its similarity to American A-6 fighter jets, something about this blip filled Riley with fear. Its trajectory and speed matched those of friendly aircraft, but the A-6 pilots often turned off their electronic identification to avoid Iraqi missiles, complicating identification. Riley faced a critical decision. The radar system he used couldn't determine the blip's altitude, and an error by the 909 radar operator left him without this crucial information. Despite the ambiguity, Riley ordered the launch of 2 Sea Dart missiles. The missiles intercepted the target, which exploded just 700 yards from the USS Missouri. For hours, Riley feared he might have shot down an American plane. However, investigations confirmed that the blip was an Iraqi Silkworm missile, not an A-6. Riley's decision had saved the battleship, but it seemed like a lucky guess until cognitive psychologist Gary Klein investigated. Klein discovered that Riley's intuition was based on subtle differences in radar patterns. The Silkworm missile, flying at a lower altitude than the A-6s, appeared on the radar at a later time after leaving the coast due to ground interference, and Riley unconsciously noticed this delay, which triggered his fear and led to his decisive action. Riley's experience highlights the power of intuition in high-pressure situations. His brain processed subtle cues that he couldn't consciously articulate, demonstrating how deeply ingrained patterns and instincts can guide critical decisions. Michael Riley had faced a critical decision when he encountered these 2 radar blips that appeared identical. His ability to distinguish between them, identifying one as a Silkworm rather than an A-6 fighter jet, can be attributed to the role of dopamine in the brain. The neurotransmitter likely triggered Riley's fear and intuition, alerting him to the threat. The significance of dopamine was first uncovered in 1954 by neuroscientists James Olds and Peter Milner. They accidentally discovered its role in pleasure and addiction when they stimulated the nucleus accumbens in rats, leading to their demise from overstimulation. However, dopamine's influence extends beyond pleasure. It regulates all emotions and aids in decision-making by predicting outcomes based on past experiences. Wolfram Schultz, a neuroscientist at Cambridge University, advanced our understanding of dopamine neurons, comparing them to photoreceptors in the retina. His research revealed that these neurons fire in anticipation of rewards, not just upon receiving them. In experiments with monkeys, Schultz found that dopamine neurons learn to predict rewards, firing at the sound of a tone that preceded a reward. This predictive ability allows the brain to anticipate outcomes and adjust expectations based on experience. Dopamine neurons create patterns from experience, forming models of correlation that help the brain anticipate future events. When expectations are met, dopamine neurons release a burst of pleasure. Conversely, when predictions are incorrect, they decrease their firing rate, signaling a prediction error. The system is crucial for learning and adapting to new situations. The anterior cingulate cortex, ACC, plays a vital role in this process by detecting errors and adjusting expectations. It translates short-term feelings into long-term lessons, ensuring that the brain's predictions are updated with new information. The ACC is densely populated with spindle neurons, which rapidly convey emotions across the brain, underscoring dopamine's importance in guiding our action. Dopamine's role in emotions and decision-making highlights the wisdom of our feelings. Emotions are not irrational impulses, but are rooted in the prediction of flexible brain cells that constantly adjust to reflect reality. This is evident in Schultz's experiments, where monkeys quickly learn to anticipate the rewards, and in humans, where dopamine neurons adjust to new experiences, such as overcoming motion sickness. When the dopamine system malfunctions, as seen in schizophrenia, the ability to make accurate predictions is compromised, leading to hallucinations and mood swings. This underscores the necessity of dopamine neurons in providing insight and guiding behavior. properly functioning dopamine neurons are essential for learning from experiences and making informed decisions, as they continuously refine their predictions to align with reality. Backgammon, the world's oldest board game, has evolved significantly over millennia, but its players have changed even more dramatically. Today, one of the best backgammon players is not a human but a software program. In the early 90s, Gerald Tesaro, a computer programmer at IBM, developed a new kind of artificial intelligence, AI, for backgammon called TD Gammon. Unlike traditional AI, which had relied on raw computer power like IBM's Deep Blue, TD Gammon was designed to learn from experience. Deep Blue, famous for defeating chess grandmaster Garry Kasparov in 1997, relied on analyzing millions of possible moves per second. However, it was rigid and incapable of learning, as its intelligence was pre-programmed by human chess experts. In contrast, Kasparov's brain, though less computationally powerful, was effective because it had been trained through experience to recognize patterns and focus on the most promising strategies. Tesaro's TD Gammon started with no knowledge of backgammon and initially made random moves. However, it learned by playing against itself, gradually improving its strategy through trial and error. After hundreds and thousands of games, TD Gammon became capable of defeating the best human players. This learning process mirrors how dopamine neurons in the brain work, using prediction errors to refine their understanding and improve decision-making. The concept of reinforcement learning used by TD Gammon has been applied to various complex problems, such as optimizing elevator schedules and flight plans. These programs learn by themselves, find optimal solutions through repeated trials, and focus on errors until they achieve efficiency. This method of learning is similar to how dopamine neurons function. They generate predictions about outcomes and adjust based on the difference between expectations and reality. This process is exemplified in the Iowa gambling task, an experiment designed by neuroscientists Antonio Damasio and Antoine Beccara. In this task, participants choose cards from decks with varying risks and rewards. While logical understanding of the best strategy takes time, participants' emotions quickly guide them to the most profitable decks, even before they can articulate why. This was a case, we spoke about this in another book too. There's a deck of red cards that either have very high gains or very large losses, and more losses than gains, or blue cards which always have very small gains. Within 10 red cards, people's palms started to sweat, indicating that they knew they shouldn't be playing the red cards. But it took them 50 cards to make a choice not to pick the red cards and to explain why they were making that choice. Emotions driven by dopamine play a crucial role in decision-making. They help us identify patterns and make predictions based on past experiences. When dopamine neurons detect a prediction error, they adjust, leading to learning and improved decision-making. This process allows us to make informed choices even when we're not consciously aware of all the information. In essence, our emotions are not irrational impulses, but are rooted in the brain's ability to learn from experience and refined predictions. They provide valuable insights that guide our decisions, often revealing a deeper understanding than we can consciously articulate. Now we're going to explore the concept of intelligent intuition and the importance of deliberate practice in honing our skills. We'll use the example of Bill Roberti, a world-class expert in chess, poker, and backgammon. Jonah emphasizes that dopamine neurons, which are responsible for our emotions and predictions, need constant training to maintain their accuracy. This training involves learning from mistakes, a process that Roberti exemplifies through his rigorous practice and self-critique. Roberti's success across different games is attributed to his ability to practice effectively, focusing on the quality of practice rather than the quantity. He meticulously reviews his games, analyzing every decision to identify and learn from his errors. This approach aligns with the insights of psychologist Carol Dweck, who has shown that learning from mistakes is crucial for education and personal growth. Dweck's studies reveal that praising effort rather than innate intelligence encourages a growth mindset, leading to better outcomes. Jonah also highlights how experts like Garry Kasparov and Tom Brady rely on their intuition developed through extensive practice and error analysis. This intuitive decision-making is supported by the brain's ability to learn from prediction errors, as demonstrated by Lieutenant Commander Michael Riley during the Persian Gulf War. Riley's training allowed him to trust his instincts and make a critical decision that saved his battleship. Overall, this section underscores the importance of embracing mistakes as opportunities for learning and improvement. It suggests that expertise is not just about accumulating knowledge, but also developing an intuitive understanding of the continuous refinement of one's skills. In this section entitled Fooled by a Feeling, Jonah delves into the complex relationship between dopamine, decision-making, and addiction. And a high school English teacher was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease at age 52, a condition marked by the death of dopamine neurons that control movement. To manage her symptoms, Anne was prescribed Requib, a dopamine agonist that mimics dopamine activity in the brain. Initially, the drug worked wonders, alleviating her movement issues. However, as her dependency on the medication grew, so did an unexpected compulsion, gambling. Anne, who had never been interested in gambling due to her upbringing, found herself irresistibly drawn to slot machines after starting her medication. Her gambling spiraled out of control, leading to the loss of over $250,000, her entire retirement savings, and even her marriage. Jonah explains that this compulsive behavior is not uncommon amongst patients on dopamine agonists, with studies indicating up to 13% develop severe gambling addictions. The allure of slot machines lies in their unpredictability, which exploits a flaw in the human brain. Dopamine neurons responsible for predicting future events become highly excited by unexpected rewards. The excitement is even greater than for predictable rewards, as the brain is wired to pay attention to new stimuli. Slot machines with their random number generators provide a constant stream of unpredictable rewards, keeping the dopamine neurons in a state of heightened excitement and preventing them from adapting to any pattern. For Parkinson's patients like Anne, the combination of dopamine agonists and the unpredictable nature of slot machines creates a perfect storm. The excess dopamine in their brains makes the unexpected rewards of gambling intensely pleasurable, leading to addiction. Jonah highlights that while emotions play a critical role in decision-making, as seen in examples like Tom Brady's intuitive gameplay, they can also lead to destructive behaviors when they become overwhelming. In conclusion, the story about Anne serves as a cautionary tale about the potential dangers of dopamine-driven decision-making. It underscores the need to understand the brain's vulnerabilities to prevent the devastating consequences of unchecked emotions, such as gambling addiction and financial ruin. In the early 80s, the Philadelphia 76ers were a powerhouse in the NBA, led by stars like Moses Malone and Julius Erving. Malone famously predicted a sweep of their playoff opponents with his 4-4-4 comment, and the team nearly achieved this, losing only one game on their way to a championship. The dominant performance led to the discussions about the hot hand phenomenon, where players are perceived to be on a streak, making them seemingly unstoppable. Psychologists Amos Tversky and Thomas Gilabich were intrigued by this concept and decided to investigate whether the hot hand was real or just a cognitive illusion. They analyzed years of 76ers game data, looking at whether players' shooting success was influenced by previous successful shots. Their findings were surprising, because there was no evidence of the hot hand. Players' chances of making a shot were independent of their previous shots, suggesting that perceived streaks were merely random occurrences. This research extended to other teams like the Boston Celtics. It included free throw attempts. Again, no evidence of hot hands was found. Even legendary players like Larry Bird showed a decline in performance after making several consecutive shots, contradicting the belief in streaks. The belief in streaks and patterns is rooted in our brain's dopamine system, which seeks to predict and find patterns, even in randomness. This tendency can lead us astray, as demonstrated in experiments where rats and humans were tested on their ability to predict random food placements. Rats, accepting randomness, performed better than Yale students who sought patterns where none existed. This cognitive bias extends beyond sports to areas like the stock market, which is inherently random. Economist Eugene Fama's research showed that stock movements are unpredictable, yet investors often perceive patterns and trends, leading to financial bubbles. Neuroscientist Reed Montague's experiments revealed that dopamine-driven fictive error learning, where the brain regrets missed opportunities, can exacerbate these bubbles. Investors increase their stakes during booms, driven by the fear of missing out, FOMO, only to face regret and panic when the bubble bursts. The lesson is clear. Trying to beat the market or predict random events with our brains is futile. Our dopamine neurons are not equipped to handle such randomness. Instead, patient, passive investment strategy like holding a low-cost index fund often outperforms active management. The world is more random than we perceive, and our emotions struggle to accept this reality. Deal or No Deal is a globally popular game show that combines luck and decision-making. Contestants choose from 26 briefcases containing various cash amounts, aimed to keep high-value cases in play. As they open the cases, a banker offers to buy their chosen case, creating tensions as players decide whether to accept the offer or gamble for more. The game is largely luck-based with no patterns to predict outcomes. However, it also involves critical decision-making moments, where contestants weigh the banker's offer against potential winnings. Ideally, players should calculate the average value of the remaining cases to make rational decisions. Most rely on emotions, making the show entertaining. Nandasimo Sansbury, a contestant from South Africa, exemplifies this emotional decision-making. Despite not using math, she makes successful choices, trusting her instincts and winning a substantial amount. However, this strategy can backfire, as seen with Frank, a Dutch contestant who loses over £100,000 by rejecting fair offers after an unlucky turn. This behavior is explained by loss aversion, a concept identified by psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. Loss aversion means people fear losses more than they value gains, leading to irrational decisions. This is evident in scenarios where framing affects choices, such as doctors preferring certain outcomes over risky ones when framed as losses. Loss aversion also impacts financial decisions, like the premium equity puzzle, where investors prefer bonds over stocks despite lower returns due to fear of losing money. Even experts like Harry Markowitz, who develop investment theories, falls prey to this bias, choosing safer options over optimal ones. Experiments show that people with impaired emotions who don't feel loss aversion make more rational investment decisions. In Deal or No Deal, contestants like Frank are swayed by emotions, rejecting fair offers due to recent losses and potential gains, leading to poor choices. Overall, loss aversion is a universal flaw, part of a broader negativity bias, where negative experiences outweigh positive ones. Understanding this bias is crucial to making more rational decisions, whether in game shows or financial markets. The credit card is my enemy, declares Herman Palmer, a financial counselor in the Bronx, who works for GreenPath, a nonprofit organization helping people manage their debt. Herman's office is stark, except for a jar filled with cut-up credit cards, a visual reminder of the financial struggles many face. He uses this jar as a shock treatment for clients, demonstrating that they are not alone in their debt issues. Herman's clients, often single mothers and working-class people, struggle to make ends meet in a neighborhood marked by economic hardship. Many spend a significant portion of their income on housing, leaving little for other necessities. Herman's empathetic approach, listening without judgment, helps clients create practical plans to manage their finances. His success rate is high, with over 65% of the clients completing their debt elimination plans. Credit cards, Herman explains, lead people to make poor financial choices by making it easier to spend money they don't have. The allure of sales and discounts often results in purchases that accumulate high-interest debt. Herman's clients frequently realize that they would not have made these purchases if they had to pay in cash, highlighting how credit cards alter spending behavior. Research supports Herman's observations. Paying with credit cards reduces activity in the brain's insula associated with negative feelings, making spending feel less painful. An MIT study found that people bid twice as much in auctions when using credit cards compared to cash, illustrating how plastic encourages reckless spending. The average American household owes $9,000 in credit card debt, with many carrying month-to-month balances. This behavior, driven by the emotional brain's tendency to prioritize immediate rewards over long-term consequences, contributes to a negative savings rate. Credit cards exploit this flaw, leading to financial instability. Subprime mortgages, similar to credit cards, tempt consumers with low initial payments but result in high long-term costs. Herman sees many clients with 228 loans, which start at low rates for the first 2 years and later increase to variable rates, often leading to foreclosure. These loans appeal to the emotional brain's desire for immediate gratification, despite their financial risks. But neuroscientific research done by Jonathan Cohen and others reveals that decisions involving immediate rewards activate emotional brain regions, while future-oriented decisions engage rational areas like the prefrontal cortex. This neural tug-of-war explains why people often choose short-term pleasures over long-term benefits. To counteract these tendencies, economists propose asymmetric paternalism, creating policies that help people make better decisions. A program like Save More Tomorrow encourages saving by delaying the start of contributions, bypassing the emotional brain's impulsivity. Herman's advice is straightforward: cut up credit cards or freeze them in a block of ice to avoid temptation. He emphasizes the importance of paying with cash to maintain fiscal discipline. While it's challenging to resist immediate desires, sometimes not getting what you want is exactly what you need. Chapter 4. In the summer of 1949, Montana experienced a severe drought, leaving the grassy highlands extremely dry. On August 5th, the hottest day recorded in the area, a lightning strike ignited a fire in the Man Gulch River Valley. A team of smoke jumpers led by veteran Wag Dodge was dispatched to combat the blaze. They flew from Missoula in a C-47 military transport plane from World War II, under the impression that the fire was small, covering only a few acres. Man Gulch is a unique geographical area where the Rocky Mountains meet the Great Plains, creating a stark contrast between pine forests and prairie grass. The fire started on the mountainous side of the gulch and quickly grew out of control, leaving behind charred hills and the skeletal remains of trees. Dodge, wary of the fire's potential to crown, where flames reached the treetops and spread rapidly, led his men to the grassy side of the gulch, aiming to stay close to the Missouri River for safety. Crown fires are notoriously difficult to control, often requiring divine intervention, as humorously noted by the smoke jumpers. Norman McLean, in Young Men and Fire, vividly described the terrifying sound of a crown fire, likening it to a speeding train. The fire's behavior can be unpredictable, with flames leaping across clearings and creating new fires that seem to defy natural laws. Dodge sensed the danger from the dry conditions and the lack of a map or radio, because the radio had been destroyed during the jump, positioned his men to observe the fire from across the canyon. As the afternoon progressed, the wind shifted unexpectedly, blowing the fire toward the smoke jumpers. The fire transformed into a massive wall of flames, advancing at 30 miles per hour and reaching temperatures capable of melting rock. Realizing the fire was too fast to outrun, Dodge instructed his men to retreat, but it was too late to reach the river. The steep canyon walls made escape difficult, and the fire's speed increased on the slope. With the fire closing in, Dodge stopped running and devised a desperate plan. He lit a fire around him, creating a small burned area, then lay down in the ashes, covering his mouth with a damp handkerchief to breathe. The innovative tactic, known as an escape fire, allowed him to survive as the main fire passed over. Tragically, 13 smoke jumpers perished in the Man Gulch fire. Only 2 others survived by finding shelter in a rocky crevice. Dodge's quick thinking and use of reason in the face of imminent danger saved his life, highlighting the critical importance of creativity and calm under pressure. The site remains a somber reminder of the event, marked by white crosses where the men fell, all below the ridge they were trying to reach. Dodge's escape fire, once seen as madness, is now a standard firefighting technique that has saved countless lives. At the time, however, his man thought he was crazy. Robert Sally, a first-year smoke jumper who survived the Man Gulch fire, recalled thinking, "Dodge has gone nuts." Yet Dodge's decision was a product of clear-headed reasoning in a moment of crisis. The question is, how did he manage to resist the instinct to flee? Dodge's experience played a crucial role. Unlike his crew, mostly teenagers with little firefighting experience, Dodge was a seasoned veteran. He understood the fire's potential, and he realized that running to the ridge was futile. The steep slopes, fierce wind, and dry grass meant that the fire would overtake them. Even if they reached the ridge, they would still be trapped by untrimmed, flammable grass. In the face of horror, Dodge's fear wasn't what saved him. Instead, he overcame the panic that gripped his men. Panic narrows one's thoughts, focusing only on immediate survival instincts like running from a fire. This phenomenon, known as perceptual narrowing, was demonstrated in a study where subjects in a pressure chamber missed peripheral stimuli due to panic, illustrating how fear can shrink one's view of the world. Dodge survived because he managed to suppress his emotions and engage his rational mind. He realized that running was useless and instead devised a creative solution, the escape fire. This decision relied on the prefrontal cortex, the brain's center for rational thought and deliberate analysis. Dodge's ability to think beyond immediate instincts allowed him to imagine a new possibility, starting a fire to create a safe zone of burned land. The prefrontal cortex, once thought to be useless, is now understood to be crucial for rational thought. It allows humans to think abstractly, plan for the future, and control impulses. This brain region's importance is highlighted by the tragic story of Mary Jackson, a promising student whose life unraveled due to a tumor pressing on her prefrontal cortex. The tumor caused excessive dysfunction, leaving her unable to control impulses or think ahead. Her story underscores the prefrontal cortex's role in rational decision-making and self-control. Mary's case illustrates how damage to the prefrontal cortex can lead to a loss of rationality and impulse control. Without this brain region's function, she couldn't resist immediate urges to gamble or follow through on long-term plans. If Mary had been in Dodge's situation, she likely wouldn't have stopped to light the match. She would have kept running, unable to conceive of an alternative solution. Moving on here, imagine you're playing a simple gambling game with $50. You have two choices: a risky gamble with a 40% chance of keeping the entire $50 and a 60% chance of losing it all, or a sure thing where you keep $20. Most people chose the sure thing, preferring a guaranteed gain over a gamble. But when the game is reframed, offering a choice between losing $30 or taking the gamble, more people opt for the gamble, even though the outcomes are identical. This is the framing effect, a cognitive bias influenced by loss aversion where people react differently based on how choices are presented. Neuroscientists studying this effect found that the amygdala, a brain region associated with emotions, is activated when people consider losses. Even those who see through the framing effect experience this emotional response. However, the key difference lies in the prefrontal cortex, which helps regulate emotions. People who resist the framing effect have more active prefrontal cortices, allowing them to override their emotional response and make more rational decisions. The ability to regulate emotions is known as metacognition, or thinking about one's own thoughts. It allows people to assess their feelings and decide which ones to act on. Aristotle emphasized this in the Nicomachean Ethics, arguing that managing emotions intelligently is crucial for virtuous behavior. This concept is mirrored in television focus groups where executives must interpret audience reactions to determine which emotional responses are meaningful. The prefrontal cortex role in decision-making is further illustrated by Walter Mischnell's marshmallow test. In this experiment, 4-year-olds were given a choice between 1 marshmallow now or 2 if they waited. Those who could delay gratification tended to have better life outcomes, such as higher SAT scores and better stress management. This ability to control impulses is linked to the prefrontal cortex, which helps manage emotions and focus on long-term goals. Children with ADHD who struggle with impulse control often have underdeveloped prefrontal cortices. As their brains mature, their ability to resist immediate temptations improves. This developmental process explains why adolescents, whose prefrontal cortices are still maturing, often engage in risky behavior. Their emotional brains are fully active, but their rational brains are still developing. The prefrontal cortex doesn't eliminate emotions, but helps us decide which ones to follow. This is evident in the Stroop task, where participants must name the color of a word rather than read the word itself. This task requires the prefrontal cortex to override automatic responses, demonstrating the role in rational decision-making. So this is a test where the color of a word is different than the word that's in color. So the word blue would be presented in green. The word red might be presented in blue. And the prefrontal cortex has to override your automatic response. Most people answer the question wrong the first time they take the test. Wag Dodge's survival during the Man Gulch fire exemplifies the power of the prefrontal cortex. Despite his fear, Dodge used rational thought to devise an escape plan, lighting an escape fire to create a safe zone. His ability to regulate his emotions and think creatively in a crisis saved his life, highlighting the importance of the prefrontal cortex in decision-making. The human brain's ability to supervise itself, known as executive control, is one of its most mysterious talents. This process, akin to a CEO issuing orders, is primarily managed by the prefrontal cortex. But how does this area exert such control over the rest of the brain? The answer lies in its unique architecture, which allows it to connect with numerous other brain regions, acting like a conductor directing an orchestra. Earl Miller, a neuroscientist at MIT, has dedicated his career to studying the prefrontal cortex. He discovered that this area is not just an aggregator of information, but actively modulates the activity of other brain regions. Unlike other cortical areas that are specialized for specific stimuli, the prefrontal cortex is versatile, able to process any type of data. This flexibility allows it to analyze problems from multiple angles, enabling creative solutions. For example, Wag Dodge's survival during the Man Gulch fire was due to his prefrontal cortex's ability to devise a new solution when the obvious response, outrunning the fire, wasn't feasible. Similarly, the candle problem illustrates how the prefrontal cortex helps solve puzzles by thinking creatively and looking beyond the initial incorrect answers. People with frontal lobe lesions struggle with such tasks because they can't think abstractly or change strategies. The candle problem is a cognitive test. It measures a person's problem-solving skills. Participants are given a candle, a box of thumbtacks, and a book of matches. They're asked to attach the candle to the wall without dripping wax onto the table. Well, people try all sorts of things to try to get the candle to stick to the wall, but the solution is to use the box of thumbtacks as a candle holder and attach it to the wall with the tacks, then stick the candle in it. It measures how likely a participant is to be functionally fixed, meaning they are unable to see the box as a potential candle holder, instead only perceive it as a container. And that was my problem when I tried it as well. Anyway, Mark Young-Beeman, a cognitive psychologist, has studied how the brain, led by the prefrontal cortex, generates creative solutions. His research shows that successful insights are preceded by a sequence of cortical events, starting with executive control areas, banishing irrelevant thoughts. This prepares the brain for the aha moment when the right answer suddenly becomes obvious. The story of a United Airlines flight, Flight 232, illustrates the power of the prefrontal cortex. On July 19, 1989, the DC-10 suffered a catastrophic hydraulic failure, leaving the pilots without control of the plane. Captain Al Haynes, using his prefrontal cortex, devised a novel solution, steering the plane using differential thrust. This counterintuitive idea, grounded in simple physics, allowed the pilots to maintain some control and attempt an emergency landing. Despite the plane's high speed and lack of brakes, pilots managed to line it up with the runway. Although the plane crashed, their innovative approach saved 184 passengers. This method of flight control they invented is now part of standard pilot training. These examples highlight the prefrontal cortex's role in executive control, enabling humans to think creatively, manage emotions, and solve complex problems. This brain region allows us to transcend our impulses and make rational decisions, even in the most challenging situations. The remarkable performance of the pilots on United Airlines Flight 232 is a testament to the power of the human brain, particularly the prefrontal cortex, in managing extreme situations. Captain Al Haynes and his crew faced a catastrophic failure when all three hydraulic lines of their DC-10 failed, leaving them with no control over the plane's flight surfaces. Despite the overwhelming odds and the expectation of a crash, Haynes managed to keep his emotions in check, a state pilots referred to as deliberate calm. This ability to maintain composure under pressure was crucial, as it allowed the crew to focus on solving the unprecedented problem they faced. The key to their success was the prefrontal cortex, which enabled Hayes to manage his emotions and think creatively. When traditional instincts and training offered no solutions, Haynes had to rely on his rational brain to devise a new method of flight control using differential thrust. This innovative approach, which involved using the engines to steer the plane, had never been attempted before. It was a product of the prefrontal cortex ability to apply abstract principles like the physics of engine thrust in novel contests. Stephen Predmore, a manager of human factors analysis at Delta Airlines, studied the decision-making process during Flight 232 in detail. He found that the pilots exchanged a high number of thought units per minute, focusing on the most critical information and minimizing distractions. This ability to prioritize tasks and concentrate on relevant data was essential to their success. Their prefrontal cortex's working memory played a crucial role, allowing pilots to hold and manipulate information, make creative associations, and generate insights. For example, when the plane began to pitch up and down in a phugoid pattern, Haynes' initial instinct was to increase the throttle during ascent to maintain airspeed. However, by thinking through the implications, he realized that this approach would be a mistake. Instead, he used his working memory to analyze the relationship between thrust and pitch, leading to the counterintuitive solution of reducing throttle during ascent. The pilot's disciplined focus and rational decision-making were key to their ability to land the plane at Sioux City, despite the lack of all hydraulic controls. Their success was not just a matter of luck, but a demonstration of the prefrontal cortex's capacity to generate creative solutions under pressure. Although Haynes modestly attributes the outcome to luck and teamwork, his ability to harness the rational talents of his prefrontal cortex was instrumental in averting disaster. It's also important to recognize that rationality is not a universal solution. In the next chapter, we'll explore the limitations of the prefrontal cortex and what happens when people rely too heavily on rational thought, illustrating that sometimes thinking too much can be detrimental. So we'll pick up with Chapter 5 in our next podcast. That's where we'll leave it. Thanks for joining. That's a wrap.